What's up, boxing fans? This is TBE Boxing, back at you again. Today's topic, the rematch. With open disdain for Crawford, can Derek James adequately prepare Spence for the rematch? Let's chop it up and see what it's all about.
Got the money for minutes, pretty bitch, gotta show me titties. This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? That life before riches, huh? That life before riches, huh? Pretty bitch, show me titties, huh? And I got the glizzy, run up on me, I'ma make you get it. I'ma make you get it. Got the money for minutes, pretty bitch, gotta show me titties. This is the life that
Okay, enough of that. Get back. Let's talk some boxing. So I was just live not too long ago, but I decided to come back live again because I had this live set up on a different uh, a different streamer, and I use another one to actually go live. So I'm gonna go back to this one because all the links are connected to this one. So yeah, so we're back live, and we're talking about the Derek James, and we're gonna talk about the Derek James, and we're gonna talk about some boxing as well. Generally speaking, not just the Crawford and Spence. We're gonna talk a little bit about what's going on boxing wise. So, but the big topic right now is the rematch. Right? Everybody's talking about the rematch. Uh, Crawford and Spence. They're going to revisit the fight and they're going to do it again. So the question is, as we saw in my uh, title, can Derek James adequately, based on the way he feels about Crawford, can Derek James adequately prepare Errol Spence for his rematch? And there's a lot of questions about that. And me personally, I don't think he can. I think he needs help, and I think he needs to get some help. Uh, you know, because I think he needs a different perspective than his own. And the old saying that two heads are better than one. So Derek James needs to get some help in their pronto, and so that Errol Spence could have a fighting chance in the next fight in the rematch. But because based on what we saw in the last fight, it didn't look like they had any plan really, besides breaking Crawford. So I don't know, how that was working, how that was supposed to work. But as we saw, it didn't work. Okay, uh, Derek James, you know, it didn't work at all. Let's just say that. Whatever, if they had a plan, it didn't work. We don't know if they had a plan or not, but whatever plan they had, it didn't work. That's for sure. And the result is what we saw. Okay, so at the end of the day, there's a big question about whether or not Derek James could actually steer this ship through the rugged waters known as Bud Crawford, and for Spence to come out on the other side safe and secure. Okay, so I mean, we got to ask. I mean, what is going to be different in the rematch? Really, what would be different? No idea, right? What could be different? As long as there's Derek James at the helm steering the ship, is it going to be any different? Is there going to be any difference? I don't think so. Okay, because up to now, I don't think Derek James has even acknowledged that he lost. Right? He said that everything's going to be different at 154 pounds, and that uh, you know Errol Spence is the better fighter. and the 7 pounds that they're going to put on for this fight, that's going to make all the difference in the world. Everything's going to be different according to Derek James. So again, what we're seeing is that there's really no plan, even for the second fight, much less a plan for the first fight. I mean, I don't know if there was a plan for the first fight. Whatever the plan was, it failed spectacularly, as we all saw. So I'm not, it's a good question. I mean, who's really pushing for this fight to happen next? It's probably Errol Spence, right? So the question we have to ask ourselves is there anybody in Errol Spence's camp that's against having this fight happen next? Is Derek James on board with the fight being next? Is he ready to face off against Bomac and Crawford again so soon after the last fight? So I mean, I haven't really heard Derek James talk about the fight too much. Okay, he hasn't talked about the first fight, the loss, and he's not really doing too much talking about the rematch. I wasn't saying that it's going to be a rematch, but he's not. He hasn't been doing much talking about Spence. Period. I'm starting to wonder if even Spence is still talking at this point. Because we haven't heard much from him about Spence or about the rematch, and it's been announced that the rematch is going to happen now that Spence actually, you know, activated the rematch, so it's going to happen. And I'm wondering if Derek James is against that or he's for it. He's for it. It'd be interesting to know what people think about that. You know, so I don't know. Uh, I'm pretty. We had heard from Steven Espinosa that he was hoping that the fight would probably happen sometime in uh it was probably going to happen sometime in the latter part of 2024 that they would have the fight then. And you know because of the way the fight ended and how the fight went, the totality of it, and plus a lot of people were saying that Spence might need more time to prepare. He might need to fight one or two fights in between first. But all that seems to be out the window now, and it's gonna be Spence. This fight's supposed to happen sometime in December, sometime. So they're going back for the fight right away. So that's interesting, in the sense that so much for all the talk about brain damage and all of that stuff about neurological damage and all of that, because Spence is ready to come back for the rematch, and so uh, he's gonna have to be approved, medically approved, and so I guess I'm pretty sure he probably got tested while he was out, and from what I'm hearing, the suspension is still on up until sometime in September, middle end of September, towards the end of September, he was suspended until then. So once that's cleared, uh, then that should be it for the rematch. And so September, we got September, October, November, December. So Spence got a little bit, like a little more than 3 months to prepare for this fight. 12 weeks. So you figure an 8 week training camp because he's just coming out of a training camp now, not too long ago. So he doesn't have to go. I don't think he had to lose a lot of weight. Even though I'm hearing that he's gained some weight since the fight and he looked kind of big from what you're hearing. But still, I don't. The fight being so coming up so quick, I don't think he's gonna be that much out of shape as if he was just sitting around for a whole year. He's only waiting for like 4 or 5 months. So yeah, you know, I guess he's gonna start training and getting himself in shape. But everybody is just saying that it's going to take a lot more than training for Errol Spence to win this fight against Crawford. It's going to take a fundamental change of his whole boxing, style and portfolio. I mean, I don't know if that's the case, but uh, some changes definitely got to be made. I would think, And a lot of things got to be, a lot of mistakes and things like that has to be, you know, uh, ironed out in terms of, in terms of some of the mistakes he made in the fight with Crawford, like reaching too much and not having his balance. Well, that the balance thing was mostly because Crawford kept him off balance by the way he was his footwork. Crawford footwork kept Spence off balance. That's what it was all about. He never gave Spence a chance to really set himself. He was doing good movement and feinting and angles and you know Spence never got his footing under him because he kept having to shift here, shift there. None of his opponents ever really moved like that he fought before. Yeah, he never fought anybody with as educated a pair of feet as Terence Crawford. Okay, and so he was never prepared for that. Okay, and it's questionable. What he was actually prepared for, or what they was actually preparing for in this fight. I mean, what were they trying to accomplish? I mean, besides getting the win, we know that. But what was the game plan? So we didn't see much evidence of a game plan besides uh, chop, chop, step to the side, chop, chop. So not much of a game plan at all. And so after the fight, we didn't hear much from Derek James about the game plan that they used in the fight. He didn't do any interviews basically about the fight at all. And when he did do interviews about the fight, all he said was that it's going to be different next time, and that Spence is still a better fighter, and that was that. We didn't hear any interview where Derek James sat down and really gave a good interview about what happened, what the strategy was trying to do, what went wrong, what he thought went right for Spence in the fight, what he thought went wrong, what they plan on improving on next, stuff like that. Like generally, sometimes you get people talk about those things after a fight with the coach or the trainer, but we never really got that with Derek James. It just seems like kind of like it was like Errol Spence that lost and not Derek James. Derek James seems to have no part in the loss at all. you know, even though he was the coach. So I don't really understand how that works. But if the fighter loses and the coach lost as well, so I mean, I would expect to see Derek James acknowledge the loss and say, well, Coach Bomack and that night was their night. That was our night. We had some stuff that we didn't go right for us. Yeah, I mean, you could say almost anything, really. I mean, without, but just nothing, zilch, zero, nothing from Derry James. He just, you come out, you let the people know, well, yeah, we had a game plan, but we couldn't really execute it that well, Crawford. But you see, in order for Derek James to do all of that, he'd have to give Crawford and Bomac credit, which he's not going to do. So he's not going to say anything about, he's not going to talk about the way the fight went because he has to give him credit for that and say, well, hey, Bomac was a better coach that night and Crawford was a better fighter. We both had our plans going in there, but hey, theirs came out on top this time around, but we're going to get them next time. Simple, nothing fancy, nothing, just simple as that. He could have just said something like that and that would have satisfied 99% of the people out there, right? But no, he couldn't even say that, because he don't want to give Crawford or Bomac any credit. More so, I think Crawford than anything else, because I think it's Crawford is the one that really sets him off for some reason. I'm not sure what that's all about, but something about Crawford just irks the shit out of Derek James. Okay, and every time you hear Crawford's name mentioned, you got something negative to say about Crawford. Try to belittle Crawford in some kind of way. So yeah, I don't know what it's all about. I don't know what it comes from, what it's all about. Maybe we're getting a deeper view into Derek James, how he actually feels about Crawford. Maybe he's afraid of Crawford, or maybe he thinks that Crawford's skills are so much that he has to come out and say something negative in order to maintain some kind of coping mechanism or something. I don't know what. I'm just speculating. Who knows what the hell it is? But everybody can tell that there's something going on there because we see how Derek James just start talking all type of stuff when anytime Crawford's name is mentioned. He just goes off. He goes off script and just don't know what to say. He just can't say anything good. you know. So I don't know what it is, man, but uh, it's not giving me too much confidence in Derek James. You know, in this rematch, and this is a chance for Errol Spence to prove that the first fight was a fluke, and based on what Derek James is saying, about that the fight, he's saying that it was just they had a bad day. So based on all of that, based on the we had a bad day excuse. When you say we had a bad day, that means that it's not that the other fighters did or the other coach or the other side did. It was just what you did. That means you just had a bad day. So they didn't really do anything to give you a bad day. It just came from out of nowhere. Your bad day just came from out of nowhere, and so you had a bad day. But usually that happens when you lose, right? So when you lose, you had a bad day, and that's Derek James is saying it's not that Crawford was the better fighter that night. It's not that Bomac was the better coach that night. It's none of that. It's just that they had a bad night. So now, if you can't even admit that, how are you going to fix the problems that you had going into the fight? How are you going to fix anything if you can't admit that there was problems in the first place, that you had problems? So Derek James has to acknowledge that the better man won that night. The better he was out coached that night, uh, and it's nothing. Nothing wrong with that. So a coach they come with their plans, and like anything else, whether it's basketball, football, or boxing, one plan is going to work better than the other plan. It's just that simple. Sometimes your plan works. For the most of the time, your plan works because you had no defeats. You had Charlo, you had Spence. Charlo got one defeat, but I think that was before Derek James. After I think it was after Derek James. He got that defeat with Derek James. But it's not like they're losing all the time, right? You know what I mean? So you can accept a loss, one loss. You have one loss, and it's no okay. These guys was a little better this time around, but next time around we're gonna come in and we're gonna do our jobs and we're gonna make sure that this doesn't happen again. But in order for you to be able to do that, you gotta admit that you lost. you know what I mean? So that didn't come out. We haven't heard that from Derek James. All we heard was that Spence is still a better fighter, and that the weight everything's going to be different because the weight is different. Yeah, the weight is different, but what's going to be different other than the weight? Most likely nothing. So for Derek James to use that, it kind of sounds like the Derek James didn't learn a lesson from the first fight, right? The Derek James that was talking smack up doing the whole first fight, 10 knockouts against who, uh, you know, weakest resume of all champions in boxing. Danny Garcia got a better resume, even though Crawford and Danny fought at 140 pounds, and Crawford was undisputed at 140 pounds, and Danny didn't do anything. Danny came up to a welterweight, and Danny lost all his welterweight fights basically. After he got the title in a elimination or some kind of award. I think he got awarded the title, and then he lost it to Sean Porter, and then he lost to Errol Spence subsequently. Subsequently, he lost to Errol Spence, and he lost all of his big fights at 147 pounds, and then Crawford came to 147 pounds and knocks out everybody that he fought at 147. But yesterday, Derek James couldn't find it within himself to come out of his mouth and say that Danny Garcia has a, even with the Kell Brook win, Danny Garcia got a better record than Crawford. So the whole thing is ridiculous, right? The whole thing is ridiculous. Uh, how is that possible? But that's what comes out of his mouth. So yeah. So with things like that, Derek James saying things like that, I'm not optimistic like I said about this fight, being successful for the Spence in the next fight. I mean, it's not no skin off my back. You know, that's they're the one that gotta. I don't think they're gonna win anyway. But You at least got to come up with some kind of coherent plan, and then you have to have some kind of a coherent explanation about what happened in the last fight in order to come up with a good plan for the next fight, right? So you got to know what went right, what went wrong, and I don't see much evidence of that, coming from Derek James. But maybe he's just keeping everything close to the vest. Who knows? Okay, maybe he's just keeping it close to the vest. But again, but either is inability to credit Spence. I mean, to credit Crawford or Bomac. I think it's a big problem. I think it's a big issue. I think it's like a little small-minded, really, and that I don't think it helps uh, Spence overall. So again, we don't know how this is going to play out. Whether Spence is going to bring in some new people, but I don't think that he needs to bring in new people. Not to say he got to get rid of Derek James, but he needs to bring in new people to help Derek James and to have a different perspective than the one that Derek James had, because we all saw where that perspective that Derek James led to in the first fight, and it led to nowhere for Spence. So Spence got to make some big decisions. Okay, Spence says he's a boss, and he's running his career, so you got to make some decisions about what's going to happen before this next fight, unless it's just going to be a cash out fight where he's just going to cash out and retire from boxing you know after he loses. But if he got any other kind of plans, then changes need to be made and need to be made quick because the fight is right around the corner. It's not like it's 6 months from now, a year from now. It's right around the corner. So whatever changes that need to be implemented have to be implemented immediately. And he doesn't give Derek James or Errol Spence much time to implement these changes that need to be made in terms of the way Errol Spence is fighting. Because I don't know if they think that all Spence got to do is just come in stronger and bigger, and that's going to take care of everything. I hope that's not what they're thinking, because if that's what they're thinking, they're going to be, in for a huge disappointment. So, this infatuation with bigger and stronger, as if that is going to be the determining factor in a fight. Well, we all saw that didn't play out as it should uh, in the first fight. You know, so yeah, Crawford is a problem for the Spence and Derrick James, and like I said, they need help. They need to bring in some help uh, to make this fight more competitive next time around. Just depending on size and strength. We all know that Crawford is a stronger man in there, so that's not going to work. So yeah, some changes need to be made. You know, and I'm not sure if I'm not 100% sure if Derek James is capable of making those changes, right? So we don't know, but uh, we're gonna find out soon enough. And if the same thing happens again that happened in the last time, then we know what time it is. Okay, but we still got a couple of months left, so we're gonna see how everybody's gonna be looking uh, leading up to the fight, and so we'll get a chance to see how Spence is looking. So I fully expect though that this time around everybody is gonna make sure, because they gotta make sure that leading up to this second fight they watch Spence very closely, because I don't want to hear after the second fight that he didn't look right. Okay, so we don't want to hear that this time around. He didn't look right. This, that, and the other. He looked sleepy. So before the fight comes up, we're gonna do videos about how Spence looks. How does he look before? I'm gonna do a video. It's gonna be, let's take a look at how Spence is looking before the fight. I might do a series of videos like that. Like maybe the last 3 days leading up to the fight, every day I'm going to do a video like how Spence is looking day three, how Spence is looking day two, how Spence is looking day one. And then we don't want to hear any excuses about how Spence looking this time around. He didn't look right, all right, that nonsense that we're hearing now. Because it's all cap. It has no basis in reality. He look the same way he look all the fights, and all this talk about him looking lethargic or this. It's all nonsense because before the fight, nobody was saying that, and everybody was saying how good Spence looked. They showed his nutritionists in the All Access, him eating food and with the big burgers and a couple of weeks before the fight and eating very comfortably without trying to starve himself or anything. So he made the weight very comfortably. That was very obvious. He ate two burgers, not one. Okay, so that's what happened. So he wasn't like he was struggling to make this weight. As as a matter of fact, from what we hear in this time, it was probably one of the easiest time he ever had making the weight. All right, supposedly. So in the next fight, we're not going to want to hear. We don't want to hear about you know. Well, we're definitely not going to hear nothing about weight drain, and we don't want to hear anything about it didn't look right. But I'm going to let my co-host uh give 10 ways that Errol Spence could win this fight against Crawford.
What's up, boxing fans? This is TBE Boxing, back at you again. Today's topic, the 10 ways that Errol Spence can possibly defeat Terence Crawford in their rematch. Let's chop it up and talk some boxing. Errol Spence and Terence Crawford are two of the best welterweights in the world, but their first fight ended with a TKO victory for Crawford, who dominated Spence with his speed, power, and boxing skills. However, Spence has a chance to redeem himself in their upcoming rematch, which is expected to take place in early 2024. Here are 10 ways that Spence could defeat Crawford in their second encounter. 1. Work on his jab. Spence has a good jab, but he did not use it effectively in the first fight. He needs to establish his jab early and often to keep Crawford at bay and set up his power punches. 2. Cut off the ring. Crawford is a master of movement and angles, and he used them to evade Spence's attacks and counter him with precision. Spence needs to cut off the ring and trap Crawford in the corners, where he can unleash his body shots and hooks. 3. Vary his attack. Spence was too predictable in the first fight, relying mostly on his overhand left hand, the occasional jab and right hook. He needs to mix up his punches and throw more combinations, especially to the head and body of Crawford. 4. Improve his defense. Spence was hit too often and too hard by Crawford, who exploited his defensive flaws and landed clean shots. Spence needs to improve his head movement, footwork, and guard to avoid getting caught by Crawford's sharp counters. 5. Be more aggressive. Spence was too passive and respectful in the first fight, allowing Crawford to dictate the pace and rhythm of the fight. He needs to be more aggressive and assertive to pressure Crawford and make him uncomfortable. 6. Use his size and strength. Spence is bigger, but seemingly not stronger than Crawford, but he did not use his physical advantages in the first fight. He needs to use his size and mass to bully and outmaneuver Crawford on the inside, clinch him, and wear him down. 7. Adjust to Crawford's switch hitting. Crawford is a switch hitter, meaning he can fight from both orthodox and southpaw stances. Spence needs to adjust to Crawford's switch hitting and be ready for both stances. 8. Be more disciplined. Spence had a nutritionist and was in supposedly the best shape for the first fight, though he has admitted in the past that he has problems with weight management and lifestyle choices. He needs to be more disciplined and dedicated, to train harder and smarter, and to come in peak condition for the rematch. 9. Have a better game plan. Spence did not have a clear game plan for the first fight, as he seemed to improvise and react to what Crawford was doing. He needs to have a better game plan for the rematch, one that suits his strengths and exploits Crawford's weaknesses. 10. Believe in himself. Spence should believe in himself and his abilities, to fight with passion and determination. and to prove that he can beat Crawford. With that said, I will leave it there. This is TBE Boxing saying, I am out.
Okay, so that's the TBE boxing 10 ways to beat Crawford for Errol Spence. You heard it here. You need to implement those plans, and that could possibly give him a shot. I don't know if Derek James have a plan, but at least he can watch my video. He can watch my video, but hey, Derek James don't watch boxing, so I guess he's probably not gonna watch it. Derek James don't watch boxing, so he probably won't even see this video. Okay, so it is what it is. Yeah. So if you don't have any ideas, you can always put up the video and take a look at it and see if you can get anything out of it. Because again, I don't know what if he had any plans in the first fight, but like I said, it didn't work at all because I don't know who he was planning for. But I think Derek James was planning for what I'm gonna tell you what Derek James was planning for. You know what he was planning for in this fight against Crawford in the first time? He was planning to fight this guy that he had in his head. The guy that he had in his head, that's in his Derek James head. This guy is this guy that Derek James was preparing Spence for. This is the guy that Derek James was preparing Spence to fight on July 29th. And this person that he was preparing Spence to fight had the weakest resume of any champion. This person had this person doing switch hitting and from one style to the next was just dumb shit. That's dumb. It's a dumb. So this guy that he was getting ready. It was a dummy, right? Because he was doing dumb shit by switch hitting, according to Derek James, right? And according to Derek James, the 10 knockouts in a row that Crawford had, which is 10 among the 31 that he has overall, uh, but against who? So according to Derek James, there was 10 knockouts against nobody. So he didn't knock anybody out. So what you count that for? We don't even know who he's knocking out according to Derek James. So that was the guy that they were preparing for. He wasn't preparing for the guy that we saw on July 29th. That Crawford that we saw, Derek James knew nothing about that Crawford because all the way up until the fight actually happened, he had a chance to tell us his preparation for the guy. And the guy that he always told us that he was preparing for was the guy with the weak resume, the guy that had 10 knockouts against nobodies, and the guy that you know, uh, you know, that's the guy he was getting ready for, not the one that we saw, not the virtuoso performer that we saw on July 29th. They knew nothing about that guy. He was shocked as anybody else when he saw that guy. Right? He was in shock when he saw that guy. He didn't know what the hell he was looking at. So he was in total shock. So he was preparing Spence for a whole total different guy. He was basically preparing Spence for Ugas 2.0. That's what Derek James was preparing Spence for. Another Ugas. Which he was gonna break sockets and ribs like he did the first time. He was gonna break him, right? So what we are seeing here is what they call hubris. Okay. So you gotta make the connection now. I want you to stay with me on this one. So now Derek James, based on the narrative, they broke Ugas, right? They broke his eye socket, they broke his rib, supposedly. And so that was what they did to Ugas. So now, and with Spence, what was it with Spence and Crawford? What was they going to do? They were going to break Crawford, just like how they broke Ugas. They wanted to break Crawford again. So basically, they came on. They was on a breaking mission, right? So just because they broke Ugas, that gave Derek James the idea that since Spence was breaking bones now, which he wasn't doing before, he's breaking eye sockets and breaking ribs, then naturally he can go ahead and so naturally his next plan is going to be break Crawford. What else could he? That's his plan. That was the whole plan. They had no other plan but to break Crawford. And the reason why they had a plan to break Crawford because Derek James thought that they broke Ugas, and if they could break Ugas, then they could break Crawford as well. And so the strategy went from breaking Ugas, that was a success, and the way they broke Ugas, then he turned that Derek James turned that result into a strategy for his next fight, break him. He broke Ugas, now they're gonna break Crawford. And so that's all this break him talk was all about. It was just a misconception, basically. You know, you're trying to turn a result into an idea for a new for a new result or a new fight, okay, and incorporating the result of a fight because that's not really a strategy, right? So the fact that Derek James and Errol Spence, felt that they broke Ugas and then they parlayed that breaking Ugas into the strategy to break Crawford, as they said. That's what it was all about. So they had an unexpected result in that they broke Ugas' eye socket and probably broke a crack of ribs or two. So now with that as the result of that fight, Derek James in his mind magically transferred that result into a strategy for his next fight. We're gonna break him. So basically, all Spence had to do was do the same thing he did in the Ugas fight, and then if he did it in the Crawford fight, he would break Crawford like he broke Ugas, and that was Derek James' whole strategy. That was the strategy, which is no strategy at all. Okay, that was the strategy. This is why Derek James don't want to talk about the strategy that they had going into the fight, or even after the fight, he don't want to talk about it. That's why, because they had no strategy. The strategy was just breaking, because that was the result of that fight. And so instead of coming up with a real strategy, Derek James just took the result of that fight and transferred it magically with magical thinking into a strategy for a fight with Crawford. And the whole strategy is to break Crawford, just because the result of the fight with Ugas was they broke Ugas. Okay, so Derek James really didn't have a strategy for this fight, other than break him. So it was no strategy. It was just a result of the last fight. He was just reliving his last fight. Uh, with the fight with Crawford, he was trying to relive that fight in this fight, and we all saw the result of that. Because he really had no plan. So that's what it's all about. So this is what is not giving me any confidence that Derek James is going to be prepared in Spence for the second rematch. For the rematch, I don't think Spence is going to be prepared. I think he's going to be as prepared as he was for the first fight, which is to say, not prepared at all. Okay, and so that's what I think. Any kind of preparation that's going to be done is going to be done by Spence, but probably by himself, because I don't really see Derek James, having the necessary fortitude and self-reflection to be able to check himself, check his ego, and do what's right to ensure that Spence could actually win this fight. Okay, I don't see that. I think his ego is caught up into this whole thing. I think he got some kind of thing going on with Crawford, where he got this I don't know, love hate relationship with Crawford. I don't know what the hell you to call it. Okay, I don't think it's love hate. It's more hate. It's a hate relationship. You know what I mean? So whatever it is that he's got going on with Crawford, it's making him think. It's not making him think clearly. He's not thinking clearly, and so I don't think he's going to do Spence any good. They need help. They need to bring some more guys in. I wouldn't be surprised, like I said before, in my recent live stream, that if I woke up tomorrow and saw that Derek J was no longer the coach or the trainer of Errol Spence, it wouldn't surprise me one bit. Not one, not even for a second. I wouldn't even blink an eye. Okay, because I mean, you know, if Errol Spence is going to be, if Errol Spence is actually, serious about actually being successful in this next fight, he's going to have to make some big changes, and those changes are going to start with the coaching. Okay, they need to add new coaches. Uh, I'm not saying you have to let Derek James go, but they need to add more coaches onto this team to get it going. So that's how I see that. So now I already did a live stream earlier, and I'm doing this basically the same live stream again. So I'm not gonna take up too much of you guys' time. I'm gonna, leave it here. Uh, with the last word being that I'm not really confident in the fact that Derek James is gonna be able to coach Errol Spence to a victory in this fight. I mean, anything could happen. We could have a miracle, and they don't happen too often, but we could have a miracle. So, we'll see how it all plays out in the end. But with that said, I'm gonna leave it there, people. Uh, miracle is what is the miracle is the strategy for the next for the rematch. You see, for Derek James, it's gonna be a miracle. So let's you know see how it all plays out in the end. With that said, people, I'm gonna leave it there. I'm out.
Got the mind of a man, it's pretty bitch, gotta show me titties. This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? That life before riches, huh? That life before riches, huh? Pretty bitch, show me titties, huh? And I got the glazzy run up on me, I'ma make you get it. I'ma make you get it.